But the first time she leaned against the counter of the repair shop, arms folded, eyes scanning the shelves like she didn't actually care what was on them, I did. And I've been trying to figure out why ever since. She lives 2 doors down. Ms. Keller, mid-40s, maybe. Always composed, always in control. She drives an old silver sedan that coughs smoke every few mornings, which is how she ended up here, waiting for me to finish replacing her alternator. Most customers hover, ask questions, check their watches. She didn't. She sat in the cracked vinyl chair by the wall, one ankle crossed over the other, and just watched. Not in a rude way, but in that quiet way that makes you overly aware of how you move, how your shirt sticks to your back, how long you take to find the right wrench. I told myself she was just bored. Still, when I finally looked up, her gaze didn't dart away the way most people's do. It lingered. Steady. Calm. It unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. "You work fast," she said finally. Her voice was low, even, like she was used to being listened to. "Fast enough?" I muttered, wiping grease from my hands onto a rag. My own voice sounded too young in my ears, like I was a kid again trying to impress someone who had already made up their mind. She smiled, just a flicker, barely there, and leaned back in her chair. That should have been the end of it. Just a customer waiting on her car. But something in the silence that followed pressed down on me. Heavy. The radio crackled with static, the fluorescent light buzzed above us, and still it felt like she was hearing something I hadn't said. When I handed back her keys, her fingers brushed mine. Not by accident. Not exactly on purpose either. Just long enough that I froze, and she didn't. "Thank you," she said, as if she'd given me more than I'd given her. The next morning, I saw her again. She was standing in her doorway, balancing a paper bag of groceries against her hip. I should have just waved, maybe mumbled hello. Instead, I crossed the lawn before I knew what I was doing. "Need help?" I asked. She raised an eyebrow, then handed me the bag without a word. Inside, I saw neat rows of vegetables, a bottle of red wine, a book tucked between them like it had been an afterthought. Her house smelled faintly of cedar and coffee. Too warm, too steady. Nothing like mine. "You can set it on the counter," she said, brushing past me to take off her coat. The air shifted when she moved, close enough that I caught the scent of her perfume, something subtle and expensive. I placed the bag down carefully, like I was afraid of breaking something fragile. Maybe I was. She turned then, finally looking at me the way she had in the shop, too direct, too steady. "You always this helpful?" I laughed, though it came out rougher than I meant. "Only when I'm trying to impress my neighbors." Another flicker of a smile. Then silence again. A long one. She didn't fill it, and neither did I. The hum of her fridge was the only sound. When I finally left, I caught myself glancing back through her doorway, as if there was something unfinished between us. I shouldn't still be thinking about it. But I am. And maybe that's where all of this really started. She was in her yard when I got home, kneeling near the hedges with a pair of shears. The sun was low, painting everything gold, but she looked tired. Not in the way people look after a long day, more like the kind of tired that comes from carrying something you never set down. I told myself I'd just say hi, then go inside. Instead, I ended up holding the ladder steady while she cleaned the gutters. She didn't ask me to. I just offered, and she tilted her head, hesitating before saying, "If you insist." From where I stood, I could see her grip the rung tighter than she needed to, knuckles pale. She wasn't afraid of heights, I could tell. It was something else. Something she wasn't going to name. "You don't have to." I called up. "I know," she said quickly, too quickly. Her voice held that edge again, measured, careful, as if she was guarding some piece of herself from spilling out. I watched the way her hands worked, precise and steady even when her balance shifted. The sleeves of her shirt were rolled back, skin pale against the fading light, a faint scar on her wrist catching the glow. It made me want to ask about it. I didn't. When she came down, she wiped her palms on her jeans, avoiding my eyes. "Thank you. Anytime," I said, and it sounded too eager. I tried to mask it with a shrug, but she noticed. She always seemed to notice. We sat on her porch steps for a few minutes after. She'd opened a bottle of water, handed it to me without asking if I wanted one. I watched her sip, her lips pressing the rim longer than necessary before she lowered it. Her laugh, when it came, was softer than I expected. I'd made some dumb comment about the gutters never actually looking clean, and she shook her head, covering her mouth like she hadn't meant to let the sound escape. That laugh felt like a secret. "You look tired," I said before I could stop myself. She froze, bottle halfway to her lips, then lowered it slowly. "Do I?" "Not in a bad way. I tried. Just like you carry more than most people." Her eyes flicked to mine then, sharp at first, then softening. For a moment, I thought she might actually answer. She didn't. She looked away instead, staring at the trees swaying against the dusky sky. "I should get inside," she said, pushing herself up. The words were polite, final, but her hand lingered on the railing longer than needed, like she was steadying herself. I stood too, but neither of us moved right away. The air felt stretched, tight between us. She glanced at me once, quick and unreadable, before walking toward her door. I told myself to leave it there, to forget it. But the image of her standing in that half-light, guarded, tired, but so vividly alive, wouldn't let me. The rain came sudden and heavy that night, thick sheets rattling against the shop's tin roof. I'd stayed late finishing paperwork when I saw headlights pull in. Her silver sedan again, wipers struggling against the storm. She stepped inside, shaking out her coat, raindrops clinging to her hair. "You're still here?" she asked, surprised but steady. "Couldn't sleep," I said, though it wasn't true. She glanced at the storm behind her, then back at me. "My lights went out. Whole street, probably. I thought you might have candles, or something." I found an old lantern in the back, dusted it off, and set it on the counter. The glow softened her face, turned the shadows under her eyes gentler. She stood close enough that our shoulders nearly brushed, close enough to hear the rhythm of her breath. "Thank you," she said, quiet, like it wasn't about the lantern. We didn't move. The storm outside roared, but in here it felt muted, cocooned. She tapped her fingers against the counter, a restless pattern, then stopped suddenly. "Can I tell you something?" she asked. I nodded before I thought. Her lips parted, then pressed shut again. She shook her head. "No, forget it. You can't," I said, softer than I meant to. Her eyes met mine, longer this time, unguarded, almost searching, and for a moment, I thought she might. I thought she'd hand me some piece of herself she kept hidden from the rest of the world. But then her phone buzzed. The screen lit up in her hand. Mark. She didn't answer, just stared at it, thumb hovering like she might, then pressing the side button instead, darkening the screen. "Ex-husband," I asked carefully. Her silence was the only answer I needed. She set the phone down, face first, as if the call itself carried weight. The air between us shifted, charged, uneven. She leaned against the counter, too close, and I swore her shoulder brushed mine this time. My pulse quickened, waiting for something I knew I shouldn't want. "You're young," she said finally, almost to herself. "And I stopped. The word beautiful rose to my tongue, but I swallowed it down. Not what I expected in a neighbor. That earned the faintest curve of her lips. She didn't look away, didn't laugh, just stayed there in the glow of the lantern. The storm cracked outside, a flash of lightning spilling across the windows. Reflexively, she flinched, and in that split second, her hand brushed mine. Warm, deliberate only by accident. I could have taken it, held on, said what was building in my throat. Instead, I froze. And then she stepped back. A breath, a pause, her expression unreadable again. "You should lock up soon," she said. Her voice was even, but softer now. When she left, the rain still pounding outside, I stood with the lantern burning low, hand tingling where hers had touched. Almi didn't see her for 3 days. Not on the porch, not near her car, not even her shadow crossing the blinds when I walked past her house. I told myself it didn't matter, but when her porch light finally flicked on one night, I found myself standing outside, half angry at myself for needing to. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been waiting. "You shouldn't keep showing up like this," she said, though she stepped aside to let me in. The house was dim, a single lamp glowing in the corner. She had a book open on the table, but it was face down, abandoned. Her glass of wine was untouched, the surface still. I stood there, unsure of what to do with my hands, with my voice. She was the one who broke it. "What are we doing?" she asked quietly. I froze. It wasn't angry, not even sharp. It was worse. It was tired. Honest. The kind of question you can't answer without giving away more than you want. I swallowed. "I don't know." Her gaze held mine, steady and searching, until it hurt to keep looking. She rubbed her palm against her arm, restless, then let it drop. "This isn't," she started, then stopped, pressing her lips together. "You're not supposed to be here." "I know," I said. And I did. But I didn't move toward the door either. Her eyes softened, then hardened again. "You make me forget myself." The words landed heavy, like they'd been pried out of her against her will. I almost laughed, bitter with nerves. "And you make me remember things I never thought about before." Her breath caught, almost imperceptible, and for a moment I thought she'd cry. Instead, she shook her head, staring down at the wine glass she hadn't touched. The room filled with everything unsaid. The ticking of a clock, my heartbeat loud in my ears. The space between us thick with all the things we kept swallowing. "Say something else," she whispered, not looking up. I did, but it wasn't what I'd meant to. "I can't stop thinking about you." The silence that followed was unbearable. She finally lifted her eyes, and in them wasn't shock or anger or even warmth, just a kind of rawness I hadn't seen before. "You shouldn't," she said, barely audible. Her voice cracked on the last word. We didn't move. I could feel the distance between us like a physical thing, but also how fragile it was, like a single step could shatter everything. Then she turned away, slowly, carefully, as if holding herself together. Her hand brushed the book on the table, steadying it though it didn't need steadying. "You should go now," she said, but not with force. Not even with certainty. I stood there longer than I should have, searching for something to anchor to. "Her back is still to me," she whispered, so low I almost missed it. I didn't plan on seeing her again so soon. After that night, after the way she said go now, I thought maybe she'd retreat for good. But the following evening, she knocked on my door. Just once. Soft. When I opened it, she stood there without her usual armor. No jacket, no careful poise. Just her, hair loose around her shoulders, looking uncertain in a way I hadn't seen before. "Can I come in?" she asked. The question was simple, but her voice carried weight, like she was already halfway to regretting it. She wandered through my living room, glancing at the scattered tools, the half-finished coffee mug on the counter. She stopped near the small shelf where I kept a few framed photos, my parents, an old dog, me at some birthday I barely remembered. Her hand hovered over one before she spoke. "You remind me of someone," she said. Her tone wasn't nostalgic. It was heavier, like the words cost something to say. I waited. "My brother," she added finally. "He was younger than me too. Restless. Always fixing things just to take them apart again. He." She trailed off, pressing her lips together. I didn't breathe. "He died when he was 24, she finished. Matter of fact, but her hands betrayed her. The way her fingers curled against her side, nails digging in. The room felt smaller then, like the air had thickened. "I'm sorry," I said. The words felt inadequate, too small for the weight of what she'd given me. She nodded once, quick, as if she didn't want pity. "It was years ago. Still, sometimes when I look at you." She stopped, shaking her head. "It feels like looking back through a window I can't close." I didn't know what to do with that. My chest ached with something I couldn't name. Part guilt, part tenderness, part fear that I'd become just a shadow of someone else she'd already lost. "I don't want to be a ghost for you," I whispered before I could stop myself. Her eyes lifted to mine then, sharp and raw. "You're not." The silence after was fragile. She stayed standing there, between my bookshelf and the window, the glow of the streetlight painting her in faint gold. I wanted to step closer, but it felt wrong to break the stillness. Finally, she turned toward the window, her reflection faint against the glass. Her voice was low, but clear. "Sometimes I wonder if the reason I can't stay away is because losing him taught me how quickly things can disappear." The words cracked something open in me. I didn't touch her. I didn't speak. I just stood there, feeling the ground shift under us. And when she finally looked back, her eyes met mine with an honesty I hadn't seen before. "It scares me," she said simply. "The way you make me want to stay." The night was cool, the kind that settles on your skin and makes you feel more awake than tired. She'd invited me in without saying the words. Just left her door open as I walked by. Inside, her house was dim again, a single lamp lit, music playing so softly it was barely there. She was sitting on the couch, legs tucked beneath her, a glass of tea balanced in her hands. I hesitated at the doorway, unsure if I should stay standing or sit. She looked up, eyes meeting mine, and patted the cushion beside her. "Just sit," she said. So I did. Too close, not close enough. For a long time, neither of us spoke. The clock ticked, the refrigerator hummed, her breathing rose and fell. I found myself memorizing small things, the way her fingers curved around the cup, the faint crease between her brows, the strand of hair brushing her cheek. She didn't bother to move. Finally, she broke the silence. "You know this isn't simple," she murmured. "I know. And it can't be, whatever you think it is. I know that too." The words sounded final, but the way her shoulders dropped, the way her voice softened, it didn't feel like an ending. More like the kind of truth that frees you to say something else. "I don't want simple," I said. My voice surprised me, calm, certain. Her lips pressed into a line, not smiling, not frowning. She set the cup down carefully, as if her hands needed to be free. "You make me feel." She stopped, searching for the word, shaking her head slightly when it didn't come. "Alive, maybe." For the first time in a while. I didn't answer, not with words. I just let the weight of what she'd said hang between us until it filled the room. She turned toward me then, slow, hesitant. Her hand was on the couch between us, fingers twitching once, as though she was debating pulling back. I shifted slightly closer, enough that the backs of our hands brushed. Neither of us moved away. It wasn't dramatic. No fireworks, no kiss. Just the quiet fact of her hand turning, her fingers sliding against mine until they fit there, warm and trembling. Her head leaned the smallest degree toward my shoulder. Not resting fully, just grazing it, like she was testing if I'd let her. I did. We sat like that for what felt like hours. Nothing spoken, nothing needing to be. The world outside moved on. Cars passing, dogs barking in the distance. But inside, time seemed to pause. Her thumb brushed once across my knuckle, a small, fragile movement. Enough to tell me everything without saying anything at all. When she finally whispered, her words were almost lost in the hum of the room. "Don't leave just yet." And I didn't. I think about that night more often than I admit. Not because of what happened, but because of what didn't. There was no kiss, no dramatic confession, no sweeping gesture. Just two people sitting in the half-light, her hand in mine, her head barely against my shoulder. And somehow that was enough. More than enough. Looking back now, I realize it wasn't the silence that defined us. It was what we allowed inside it. All the things we didn't say, but couldn't hide. The grief she carried, the longing I couldn't shake, the strange comfort we found in each other's presence. She taught me that love, if that's what this was, or what it became, isn't always fireworks. Sometimes it's just the relief of being seen by someone who shouldn't see you, but does anyway. And I think I changed too. Before her, I thought connection was supposed to be loud, obvious, something you chased until it gave in. But with her, it was different. It was patience, restraint, learning how to sit still with the weight of another person's history without trying to fix it. She once told me she didn't know how to be looked at the way I looked at her. But over time, she stopped pulling away from it. Maybe she even let herself believe she deserved it. And maybe that's the closest thing to love either of us could give in that moment. Permission to exist without pretending. We didn't become a fairy tale. There were no neat endings waiting for us. No labels that made it easier. What we had was messy, uncertain, sometimes even painful. But it was real. And I think real counts for more than perfect ever could. The truth is, I don't know where it goes from here. Maybe we'll keep finding each other in the quiet. Maybe one day we won't. But I know this. She left a mark on me that doesn't fade. A reminder that sometimes the most dangerous, most beautiful thing you can do is simply stay. And when my neighbor said, Stay with me. Maybe I should have run. But I didn't. And that choice changed me in ways I'm still discovering. So if you've made it this far, tell me, have you ever stayed when you should have walked away? I don't know how to be looked at like that anymore. Ost.